Hi there, and welcome to Ku English. In this series, we explore the lives of amazing people and help you improve your English at the same time. Ready? Let's dive in. Emmy Noether, the hidden genius who changed mathematics forever. Chapter 1. A Curious Mind in a Restrictive World. Amelie Emmy Noether was born on March 23, 1882, in the small German town of Erlangen. From the very beginning, Emmy's world was full of questions. Even as a child, she was curious about how things worked. She loved solving puzzles and playing logic games. Her favorite activities involved patterns and finding order in things that seemed random to others. But Emmy was not growing up in a time or place where a girl's intelligence was encouraged, especially in science or mathematics. Her father, Max Noether, was a respected mathematician and professor at the University of Erlangen. He had a deep influence on Emmy, though he never imagined that his daughter would one day outshine him in the field he loved so much. Her mother, Ida Noether, came from a wealthy family of merchants. Ida was intelligent too, but like many women of her time, she stayed within the traditional roles of wife and mother. In late 19th century Germany, education for girls was limited. While boys studied Latin, algebra, and science, girls were taught music, French, and home management. Emmy did not seem to fit into these molds. She followed the rules, but her interests went far beyond them. She was fascinated by numbers, logical structures, and solving intellectual problems. However, society expected her to learn how to cook, sew, and prepare to become a proper lady, not a scholar. Still, Emmy did well in school and was well liked. She was cheerful, witty, and had a sense of humor that stayed with her for life. She had a talent for languages and even passed an exam to become a teacher of French and English. But deep down, she knew her true love was mathematics. She did not want to just teach language. She wanted to explore the universe of numbers. At that time, girls were not allowed to formally enroll in universities. But Emmy was determined. She began to sit in on classes at the University of Erlangen, where her father taught. Though she was not officially a student, she took detailed notes and studied with great passion. Her father's colleagues noticed her intelligence, though they were not all supportive. One professor even said that allowing a woman into academic lectures would disturb the serious atmosphere of the classroom. Emmy refused to give up. Her quiet determination, combined with her growing reputation among local mathematicians, eventually opened a few doors. When the University of Erlangen changed its rules in 1904 to allow women to officially study, Emmy was among the first to take full advantage. She formally enrolled and began to pursue her passion with intensity. Even in this more welcoming environment, Emmy was far from equal. She had to work harder than her male classmates to be taken seriously. She also had to balance her studies with household responsibilities, since she was still living at home. But these obstacles did not slow her down. In fact, they made her stronger. Her love for mathematics grew with every year. She was especially drawn to abstract algebra, a field that focused not on numbers themselves but on the structures and patterns behind them. It was complex, elegant, and deeply logical, everything that Emmy enjoyed. By the time she completed her studies, it was clear to those around her. Emmy Noether was not just a bright student, she was a genius in the making. This chapter marks the beginning of Emmy's long journey through a world that often resisted her, but which she would change forever. Her mind was too sharp and her passion too strong to be contained by the limits of her time. The next chapter will take us deeper into her family roots and the early forces that shaped her into the pioneer she became. Chapter 2. Growing Up Noether. Family, Culture, and Early Education. Emmy Noether was born into a household filled with learning and intellectual discussion. Her father, Max Noether, was a man of great perseverance. Despite suffering from polio at a young age, which left him physically disabled, he became one of the leading mathematicians of his generation. Max was a living example of what hard work and determination could achieve, and he provided a quiet but powerful role model for Emmy. The Noether family lived in a spacious house near the university where Max taught. Their home was often filled with books, students, and visiting professors. This environment gave Emmy early exposure to academic conversations, even though she rarely participated as a child. She would sit quietly, listening and observing, developing her own thoughts. Her mother, Ida Kaufman-Noether, came from a family that valued business success. Though not trained in the sciences, she managed the household with skill and care. Ida expected Emmy to learn the proper manners of a young lady, including needlework, music, and social grace. Emmy tried her best, but her heart was elsewhere. As a child, Emmy struggled with poor eyesight and was known to be somewhat clumsy. She did not shine in sports or dance, which were seen as appropriate for girls. Instead, she showed remarkable memory and concentration. She could spend hours on a single problem, driven by a deep desire to understand. Her patience and focus surprised even the adults around her. In school, Emmy's teachers noticed her talent for languages. She had a natural ear for rhythm and grammar. She quickly mastered English and French, which were considered suitable subjects for girls aiming to become governesses or teachers. However, her real gift, the way she thought in logical structures, was not something most schools knew how to recognize or encourage, especially in girls. When Emmy was about 10 years old, she began to ask more and more questions at home about how numbers worked, what her father taught, and why certain things in nature followed patterns. Max was pleased by her curiosity, but cautious about her future. He understood how hard the academic world could be, especially for a woman. Still, Emmy's passion could not be hidden. She often borrowed her father's textbooks and tried to work through them herself. Though many of the ideas were far beyond her age, she refused to give up. She also began to help her younger brothers with their schoolwork, showing early signs of the gifted teacher she would later become. During her teenage years, Emmy's formal education remained limited by the norms of the time, but the Noether home became her real classroom. Through conversations with her father and his colleagues, through books she read late into the night, Emmy built a foundation of thinking that would prepare her for the challenges ahead. Her mother, though concerned about social appearances, allowed Emmy some space to pursue her interests. By the time Emmy reached adulthood, she had developed a quiet confidence. She knew she was different, not just in her interests, but in her way of seeing the world. She didn't dream of marriage or a traditional life. She dreamed of equations, logic, and uncovering truths hidden beneath the surface of things. The early years in the Noether household, filled with both encouragement and limitations, shaped the woman who would go on to challenge the greatest minds of her time. The next chapter will take us into Emmy's early steps into higher education and the struggles she faced as a woman daring to study mathematics in a male-dominated world. Chapter 3. Breaking Barriers in a Male-Dominated World. In 1900, when Emmy Noether was just 18, the world of mathematics was nearly closed to women. Few universities accepted female students, and even fewer believed women could contribute meaningfully to science. But Emmy was not one to accept limits easily. Her early exposure to academic life through her father had lit a fire within her, and she was ready to challenge the rules of her time. After completing the coursework needed to teach languages, Emmy made a bold decision. She would pursue mathematics, even if the path was uncertain. At that time, women were not officially allowed to enroll in most German universities. However, some institutions allowed them to audit courses, that is, to attend lectures without being formally enrolled or given credit. So in 1900, Emmy began to audit mathematics classes at the University of Erlangen. The environment was difficult. She was often the only woman in the room. Some professors ignored her, others were openly dismissive. Her presence was seen as unusual, even unwelcome. One professor joked that he hoped admitting women would not weaken the intellectual atmosphere. Still, Emmy came to every class, sat in the front row, and took detailed notes. She asked smart questions. She followed complex arguments. Slowly, even the most skeptical professors began to notice her. In 1904, the University of Erlangen finally changed its policies to allow women to formally enroll. Emmy was among the first to take this opportunity. She worked harder than ever before. The lectures were demanding, the material advanced, and she had to constantly prove that she belonged. But she was brilliant and passionate. Her mind was like a sponge, absorbing ideas and making connections that others had missed. After completing her degree, Emmy decided to pursue a doctorate. At the time, this was almost unheard of for a woman. Only a handful of women in Germany had ever earned doctoral degrees in any subject, let alone in mathematics. But Emmy was determined. She chose a challenging topic in abstract algebra and began to work under the supervision of Paul Gordon, a prominent mathematician known as the king of invariant theory. Gordon was impressed by Emmy's precision and depth of thought. Though he had little experience mentoring women, he supported her work. Emmy's dissertation, which she completed in 1907, dealt with complex mathematical structures that required careful reasoning and deep insight. It was a strong piece of research, but still written in the traditional, detailed style of her advisor. Emmy would soon go beyond that, developing a more abstract, elegant approach to algebra that would redefine the field. With a doctorate in hand, Emmy was now Dr. Noether, but she still faced major obstacles. There were no academic positions available to women. She could not be hired as a professor. She could not even officially teach classes under her own name. Instead, she returned to Erlangen and worked as an unpaid lecturer, sometimes offering substitute lectures when her father or other professors were unavailable. She spent the next several years working in the shadows. Though unpaid, she continued to research, publish papers, and attend academic meetings. Her work gained attention among mathematicians across Europe. Slowly, her name began to appear in serious mathematical discussions. Yet she was still denied the most basic professional recognition. This was a time when women were expected to stay silent, modest, and supportive, not to lead in any field, especially not in mathematics. In 1915, everything changed. David Hilbert and Felix Klein, two of the most respected mathematicians in the world, invited Emmy to join the mathematics department at the University of Göttingen. Göttingen was one of the top centers for mathematical research, often compared to Cambridge or Paris in importance. Hilbert and Klein had recognized Emmy's talent and wanted her to contribute to their work in physics and algebra. However, there was a problem. The university administration refused to let a woman join the faculty. The faculty rules did not permit women to be professors, especially not in fields like mathematics. Hilbert fought back. In an infamous argument, he reportedly shouted, "Gentlemen, the university senate is not a bathhouse. Why should it matter if the candidate is a woman?" Eventually, a compromise was reached. Emmy was allowed to lecture, but only under Hilbert's name. For several years, she gave lectures officially listed as Hilbert's courses, even though she was the one teaching them. She received no salary and no formal title, yet she continued her work with great energy. She engaged in deep discussions with Hilbert, Klein, and other leading thinkers. Her ideas were reshaping the foundations of algebra and physics. This period marked a turning point, not only for Emmy Noether, but for the role of women in academia. Through her persistence, brilliance, and humility, she earned respect in one of the most elite mathematical circles in the world. Her presence, once considered a scandal, became a symbol of change. In the years that followed, Emmy would go on to make some of the most important contributions to modern science. But this chapter, the struggle to be heard and seen, is what gave her the strength to succeed. She had proven that genius knows no gender, and that barriers, however strong, can be broken. The next chapter will take us into Emmy's years at Göttingen, where her ideas matured and her influence expanded beyond anything she had imagined. Chapter 4. The Göttingen Years, a New Mathematical Home. By 1915, Emmy Noether had become a central figure in one of the most prestigious mathematics departments in the world, Göttingen University. This German town had become a powerhouse of mathematical thinking, home to giants like David Hilbert and Felix Klein. For Emmy, Göttingen was more than just a workplace. It was a place where her mind could roam free, even if her title and pay did not match her brilliance. Despite her growing reputation, Emmy still held no official academic position. Because she was a woman, the university could not grant her a formal professorship. Instead, she lectured under David Hilbert's name. Some faculty members protested against the idea of a woman teaching male students. In one infamous debate, when critics argued, "What will our soldiers think if they return to find a woman as a professor?" Hilbert replied sharply, "Gentlemen, the university is not a bathhouse." These words became famous, a symbol of the absurd barriers Emmy faced. Yet she refused to let such resistance stop her. She continued to give lectures, guide students, and explore the mysteries of algebra with extraordinary depth and creativity. Her work in Göttingen soon began to attract a small group of loyal students and followers. These students were not just learning techniques or solving equations, they were absorbing a way of thinking. Emmy's lectures were not always easy to follow. She often spoke quickly, filled the blackboard with symbols, and leaped through steps without explanation. But she challenged her students to think for themselves, to explore ideas deeply rather than memorize results. Among this group, she became affectionately known as der Noether, using the masculine article in German. It was not a comment on her gender, but rather a sign of respect, recognition that she belonged in the highest ranks of mathematics, regardless of societal expectations. During these years, Emmy focused her research on abstract algebra, particularly structures called rings, fields, and ideals. She helped lay the foundations of what would become modern algebra. Her approach was unusual at the time. She cared less about solving individual problems and more about understanding the systems behind them. Her thinking was structural, elegant, and general. One of her most important achievements in Göttingen was a series of papers on the theory of ideals in ring theory. These concepts may sound technical, but they are crucial for understanding how numbers and equations behave in more complex settings. Emmy's work allowed future mathematicians to simplify and unify many areas of algebra, number theory, and geometry. Her ideas were so ahead of their time that even many mathematicians struggled to grasp them, but those who did saw the future. Bartel van der Waerden, one of her students, later wrote a famous textbook based largely on her lectures. Through his book, Noether's ideas reached a wider audience, even though she received little credit during her lifetime. Outside the classroom, Emmy was modest and warm. She dressed simply, cared little for personal luxury, and often welcomed students into her home for discussions and meals. Her personality was full of contradictions, fiercely logical yet emotionally generous, shy in public yet bold in thought. She had no interest in fame, only in truth. Her life in Göttingen was not always easy, but it was deeply fulfilling. She had found a place where she could do what she loved, explore the universe through mathematics, and share that joy with others. Even without a title, she had become a leader in one of the world's most important intellectual communities. And in this fertile ground, the seed of her most famous idea, Noether's theorem, was beginning to take root. Chapter 5. Noether's Theorem, a Revolution in Physics and Mathematics. In the year 1915, as World War I raged across Europe, Emmy Noether was quietly reshaping the future of science from her post in Göttingen. Her collaboration with David Hilbert brought her into direct contact with one of the most puzzling and important challenges in theoretical physics at the time, Einstein's newly formulated theory of general relativity. The problem wasn't with Einstein's ideas, but with the mathematics needed to support them. Einstein's general theory of relativity had introduced a revolutionary view of space and time. However, the theory had a weakness. It lacked a solid mathematical explanation for why certain physical quantities, like energy, seemed to be conserved. Hilbert, deeply interested in the foundations of physics, believed Emmy Noether might be able to help, and he was right. What Emmy produced became one of the most significant results in 20th century science, what we now call Noether's theorem. At its core, her theorem stated that every symmetry in a physical system corresponds to a conservation law. For example, the fact that the laws of physics don't change over time, time symmetry implies the conservation of energy. Similarly, the symmetry of space leads to the conservation of momentum. The beauty of Noether's theorem is that it connects two powerful ideas, symmetry and conservation. It provided a unifying framework that helped physicists understand why nature behaves the way it does. It explained patterns across many different areas of physics, from classical mechanics to quantum field theory. Today, Noether's theorem is considered a cornerstone of modern physics. But at the time, her contribution was not widely understood. Her paper, published in 1918, entitled Invariant Variation Sprable, was mathematically rigorous and complex. It received little attention outside of a small circle of mathematicians and physicists. And yet, those who read and understood it were amazed. Einstein himself acknowledged the power of her insight, praising her work as a profound contribution to theoretical physics. What made Noether's theorem so powerful was its generality. Instead of solving just one problem, Emmy created a principle that applied to an entire class of problems. This was typical of her mathematical style. She was not interested in quick answers or flashy results. She wanted to understand the deeper structure behind things. Her mind worked like a sculptor's hands, revealing the form hidden beneath the stone. Noether's theorem would go on to influence the development of quantum mechanics, gauge theory, and modern particle physics. It showed that mathematical beauty and physical truth were closely linked. And it established Emmy Noether as not just a great mathematician, but also as a visionary in the world of science. Even though she was still not fully accepted by the academic establishment, still teaching without pay, still lacking a proper title, Emmy had achieved something extraordinary. She had helped shape the laws of nature themselves. And she did so not with fame or fortune, but with quiet determination, intellectual clarity, and a relentless love for mathematics. The full recognition of her theorem would take decades, but those who studied with her knew they were learning from someone truly special. She had opened a door that others would walk through for generations to come. As one physicist later wrote, Noether's theorem is as important to physics as Newton's laws. And yet, in the years that followed, Emmy Noether continued her work as she always had, thinking deeply, teaching generously, and changing the world one theorem at a time. Chapter 6. Mentorship, Friendship, and Intellectual Legacy. While Emmy Noether's personal achievements were extraordinary, perhaps her most enduring legacy lies in the influence she had on others. During her years at Göttingen, she attracted a devoted group of students who not only admired her brilliance, but were shaped by her unique way of thinking. These young minds, many of whom would go on to become leaders in mathematics, were known as Noether's boys, although the group included both male and female students. Unlike many professors of her time, Emmy fostered a collaborative environment. Her home often served as an informal classroom where students would gather for lively discussions over simple meals. She treated them not just as learners, but as fellow explorers on a shared journey. Her passion was contagious, and her guidance was both demanding and deeply supportive. Emmy's teaching style was unconventional. She didn't give easy answers. Instead, she posed deep questions, challenged assumptions, and insisted on clarity of thought. Her students were pushed to discover insights on their own, building their understanding from the ground up. This approach created independent thinkers who could carry her ideas into new fields and generations. Among her most well-known students was Bartel van der Waerden, who later synthesized Emmy's lectures into a landmark textbook on abstract algebra. Through his work, her influence spread far beyond the walls of Göttingen. Her ideas shaped not just what mathematics was, but how it was taught. Outside academia, Emmy's friendships also reflected her warmth and integrity. She maintained close ties with fellow mathematicians like Pavel Alexandrov and Hermann Weyl, and her letters reveal a sharp wit, deep curiosity, and unwavering kindness. Though she never married or had children, she created a kind of intellectual family, one bound not by blood, but by shared purpose and respect. Her influence was not limited to her closest students. As her reputation slowly grew, more mathematicians across Europe and beyond began to appreciate the depth of her contributions. Even in circles where her name was not well known, her ideas quietly shaped the course of mathematical thought. It is important to note that Emmy did all this in a time when women were still largely excluded from academic life. Her ability to inspire, guide, and mentor others in such an environment speaks not only to her intellect, but also to her character. In an era when few doors were open to women in science, Emmy Noether did more than walk through those doors. She held them open for others. Her life was a testament to the power of ideas, the importance of community, and the lasting value of generosity in the world of knowledge. As the 1920s came to a close, her circle of students had grown, and her impact was undeniable to those who knew her. Yet, the world around her was changing, and dark clouds were forming over Germany. In the years to come, Emmy's resilience would be tested in ways even she could not have predicted. Chapter 7. Expelled and Exiled. The Nazi Threat. As the 1930s began, Germany underwent a dramatic and dangerous transformation. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party brought fear, violence, and radical changes to all aspects of life, especially for Jewish citizens and anyone considered politically undesirable. Emmy Noether, who was both Jewish and a progressive thinker, became a target of this new regime. In 1933, the Nazis enacted laws to remove Jews and political dissidents from government positions, including universities. Emmy was quickly dismissed from her teaching role at Göttingen. Despite the shock and injustice, she responded with her usual calm and practical spirit. "I do not worry about myself," she told a friend, "but about the university and the students who have lost so much." Her dismissal was a painful moment, not just for Emmy, but for the entire Göttingen academic community. Many of her colleagues' brilliant minds, such as Max Born and Richard Courant, also fled or were forced out. The university that had once been a symbol of intellectual freedom was now silenced by fear and hatred. Emmy found herself in exile, not by choice, but by necessity. Fortunately, her international reputation opened new possibilities. Offers of help came from various universities abroad, and soon she received an invitation from Bryn Mawr College in the United States. The American academic world was beginning to recognize her genius, and many scholars wanted to bring her brilliance to their institutions. Though the decision to leave Germany was not easy, Emmy accepted the offer from Bryn Mawr. She knew it would be a chance to continue her work, to teach, and to live free from persecution. Still, it meant leaving behind the country she had called home for more than 50 years. Her departure marked the end of a golden era in German mathematics. The intellectual community in Göttingen, once the brightest in Europe, was torn apart by Nazi ideology. Many groundbreaking researchers, especially Jewish scholars, were scattered across the world, forced to begin again in unfamiliar places. For Emmy, the move was both an escape and a new beginning. It demonstrated her resilience and her lifelong dedication to truth and knowledge, no matter the cost. She never stopped working, never lost her humor, and never let hatred destroy her purpose. As she boarded the ship to America, Emmy Noether was no longer just a German mathematician. She was now a global symbol of courage, intellect, and integrity in the face of cruelty. The next chapter of her life would unfold in a new country, but her spirit remained as bold and generous as ever. Chapter 8. A New Chapter in America. Emmy Noether arrived in the United States in late 1933. She had left behind a country in chaos and landed in a nation that was still recovering from the Great Depression. Yet she was filled with renewed energy. At Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, a small women's college known for its academic rigor, Emmy was welcomed with warmth and respect. Though the college was modest in size compared to Göttingen, it provided Emmy with a safe space to continue her teaching and research. She was given an office, a small salary, and, most importantly, eager students. These young women, many of whom had never encountered a teacher like Emmy, were immediately drawn to her passion, brilliance, and unpretentious style. Emmy's lectures at Bryn Mawr were full of energy and intellectual challenge. She treated her students as equals, always encouraging them to question and explore. Don't memorize. Understand, she would often say. For Emmy, real learning was about curiosity, not rules. She also began giving lectures at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, where some of the greatest minds of the time, including Albert Einstein, had gathered. Although she was not officially appointed there, her ideas and presence were deeply respected. Einstein himself once wrote in a letter that Emmy was the most important woman in the history of mathematics. Despite her age and health concerns, Emmy continued to pour herself into her work. she also adapted quickly to American life. Her humor, generosity, and love for teaching made her a beloved figure among her new colleagues and students. She would often invite students to tea, treating them like family, making mathematical discussion feel both serious and joyful. In America, Emmy was no longer an outsider struggling for recognition. She was a pioneer, appreciated for her intellectual gifts and her unique ability to inspire others. She demonstrated how a woman, especially one who had faced lifelong discrimination, could thrive and lead in the world of science. This chapter of her life was short but meaningful. It proved that even after being exiled, she could rebuild and enrich the academic world in a different country. She continued to break down barriers and remained committed to supporting the next generation of thinkers. For many students at Bryn Mawr, having Emmy Noether as a professor was a life-changing experience. She showed them that mathematics could be alive and poetic, and that thinking deeply could be joyful. In just 2 short years, she transformed the small academic community, leaving an impact that would last far beyond her time there. Chapter 9. Final Years and Sudden Departure. By early 1935, Emmy Noether had found a new rhythm in her life in America. She was teaching bright young women, giving occasional lectures at Princeton, and enjoying a degree of respect and freedom she had never fully experienced in Germany. Her warm and humble nature had made her not only a revered academic figure, but also a cherished mentor and friend. However, around April of that year, Emmy began experiencing health issues. She had long ignored her physical problems, as her focus was always on work and the people she supported. But this time, the symptoms could not be ignored. Doctors discovered a tumor in her abdomen. Though initially hopeful, she agreed to undergo surgery at a hospital in Bryn Mawr. The operation seemed successful at first. Emmy even sat up in bed afterward and spoke to visitors. But just 4 days later, on April 14, 1935, she died suddenly of complications. The news shocked her colleagues, students, and the global academic community. She was only 53 years old. Albert Einstein, who had grown increasingly fond of her during their time in Princeton, wrote an obituary in her honor for the New York Times. In it, he described her as a mathematical genius who had changed the way we think. He also lamented how her brilliance had not been properly recognized during her life due to prejudice against women. Her students and fellow mathematicians held a memorial service at Bryn Mawr, where many spoke of her kindness, intelligence, and generosity. Even those who had known her only briefly were moved by her open heart and sharp mind. Her impact had been deep and wide, even in such a short time in the United States. Emmy's death marked a profound loss not just in mathematics, but in the broader fight for equity and academic integrity. She had battled through societal limitations, political upheaval, and personal doubt to leave behind a body of work that would continue to influence science for generations. In the years that followed, her ideas continued to flourish, developed further by students and scholars who recognized her profound contributions. Yet the woman herself, so humble, so private, remained somewhat hidden behind the equations and theories she had shaped. Emmy Noether's final years, though few, were full of meaning. She had finally found a place where her work was respected and her voice heard. Her sudden death left a space in the world of science that could not easily be filled. But her legacy, as the chapters to come will show, only continued to grow stronger with time. Chapter 10. Enduring Legacy. The Woman Who Rewrote the Rules. Emmy Noether's legacy is one that has grown more powerful with each passing decade. While she lived much of her life in the shadows of male peers and institutional limitations, the light of her work has continued to shine brightly in the fields of mathematics and physics. Her contributions to abstract algebra and theoretical physics were not simply innovative, they were foundational. Today, Noether's theorem remains a critical tool in modern physics. The theorem elegantly links symmetries and conservation laws, forming a bridge between mathematics and nature that has proven essential to quantum mechanics, particle physics, and cosmology. Researchers still rely on it to explore the deepest questions about the universe. In mathematics, her work in ring theory, group theory, and module theory set the stage for new branches of algebra. Mathematicians regularly refer to Noetherian rings, a concept she introduced, to bring greater clarity and structure to abstract algebra. Many textbooks and university courses around the world include her theories as core curriculum, but Emmy's influence extends beyond her academic legacy. She broke barriers that had kept generations of women from entering the sciences. Her story is a beacon of hope and perseverance for anyone who has been told they don't belong. She proved that genius can come from unexpected places and that true greatness often carries a quiet voice. Memorials, scholarships, and conferences now bear her name. From Emmy Noether lectures to the Noetherian ring at Bryn Mawr, her name lives on not just as a scientist but as a symbol of resilience and innovation. Even Google once honored her with a doodle, bringing her story to millions around the world. Historians and scientists often reflect on how underappreciated she was in her lifetime, but that narrative is slowly changing. With each passing year, more people come to know and admire her, not only for her mind, but for her courage. She stood up to prejudice, endured exile, and remained true to her work. Her story shows us that education, curiosity, and determination can change the world even if the world is slow to recognize it. In the end, Emmy Noether didn't just solve problems. She transformed how we ask questions. And in doing so, she changed the way we see the universe and ourselves. Thanks for learning with Ku English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.